The sky above EpicSciFiTales was filled with silver clouds that glowed from the twin suns. The citadel stood high above the floating city, its walls made of shining black stone and moving energy veins that pulsed like living light. Inside the great hall, hundreds of armored guards stood silent in perfect formation. The air was heavy with perfume from the gardens and the faint hum of the power crystals that lit the room. At the far end, on a raised platform of white crystal, sat Queen Serathis of the Elorian Empire. Her crown was woven from living metal, her long silver-blue hair flowing over a dark robe that shimmered like water. Her eyes, deep violet and faintly glowing, could silence anyone who looked into them. The queen was calm, yet her mind was full of storms. The Empire had fought for decades against humankind. Both sides were tired, but pride had stopped peace again and again. That morning, waited for a Gestan envoy from Earth itself. It was not usual for a human to walk into the royal citadel. For many Elorians, humans were seen as rough and simple beings, good with machines but lacking grace. Still, the queen had agreed to this meeting. Her advisors had begged her not to. They feared insult or danger. But she had insisted. If peace is to be built, one must risk trust, she had said. The large doors of the throne room opened with a hiss of air. The guards turned sharply. A group of humans entered, wearing clean white uniforms marked with the Terran fleet symbol, a golden circle around a blue star. At their front walked a tall man with calm eyes and light brown hair touched by age. His uniform carried no heavy metals, just a single silver bar at his chest. He walked as if used to danger, but unafraid of it. Captain Aaron Holt of the Terran fleet, announced the translator, a small floating orb that spoke both languages at once. Envoy of the Earth Council. Aaron bowed slightly. Your Majesty, he said in a steady voice, I come seeking understanding between our worlds. The queen studied him. For a moment, she forgot the crowd, the guards, even her crown. His voice, it stirred something faint and old inside her mind. A sound half-remembered, like an echo from a dream long forgotten. She looked again at his face. The same strong jaw, the calm eyes that seemed to carry light from distant stars. She felt her breath catch. It cannot be him, she thought. That human is long gone. Years ago, 16 cycles by, Elorian Time-Sorothis had not yet been queen. She had been a young officer in the Skyguard, her ship struck by a meteor storm on a forbidden moon. She had crashed, alone and trapped under burning metal. It was a human one-man, wearing a damaged exosuit, who had pulled her from the wreckage. He had spoken little, only helped her breathe, carried her through fire, and left before her rescuers arrived. She had never learned his name. She had remembered his face only in flashes, smoke, starlight, and kind eyes above a cracked helmet. Now, those same eyes stood before her throne. The hall waited in silence for her reply. The queen's advisor, a tall Elorian named Vareth, leaned closer and whispered, Your Majesty, do not stare. Remember your dignity before the human. Serathis blinked and forced herself to sit straighter. Welcome to EpicSciFiTales, Captain Holt, she said slowly. You stand before the Empire's court under the banner of truce. We shall hear your words. Aaron nodded. Thank you, Your Majesty. My people wish for peace, or at least the beginning of it. We have fought for too long, each side calling the other monster. I have seen both sides bleed. Perhaps today we can start something better. Some of the guards shifted uncomfortably. The word peace was dangerous. Vareth frowned. Peace cannot be spoken of so easily, human. You may wear fine cloth, but you come from a race that brought fire to our borders. Aaron looked at him calmly. And your fleets brought storms to ours. We both have scars. That's why I'm here. Serathis raised her hand. Enough, Vareth. Her eyes returned to Aaron. You speak bravely. But words are wind unless followed by truth. Why should we believe this truce is not a trick? Aaron met her gaze without fear. Because I have nothing left to gain from war. And because... He paused, almost thoughtful. Because I once learned that mercy between enemies can mean survival for both. The queen's heartbeat quickened. Mercy between enemies. The same phrase that man had spoken on the burning moon when he lifted the wreckage off her. Could this truly be the same man? No, impossible. Humans lived shorter lives, but still, the way he stood. The sound of his voice her mind would not let go. She rose from her throne and descended the crystal steps slowly, her robe whispering against the floor. The guards stiffened, not used to seeing her approach a foreigner. She walked until she stood only a few feet from Aaron. Her eyes studied every detail, the scar near his temple, the faint line across his hand. Her voice softened slightly. "Captain Holt, have you ever been to the moon called Doria?" Aaron looked surprised by the sudden question. "Yes. Many years ago, during a rescue mission, after a meteor strike." "Why do you ask? Did you save someone there?" She pressed. He hesitated, searching memory. "There was a crash, a Lorian ship. I found one survivor trapped under metal. She was injured. I helped her out, but before I could ask her name, she vanished when her people arrived." He smiled faintly. "Strange night. I didn't think anyone remembered that." The hall seemed to fade from Sarathis' hearing. Her vision blurred with old emotion. She turned away for a moment, pretending to look at the wall lights so the others would not see the shock in her face. She whispered to herself, "It is him." Vareth stepped forward. "Your Majesty?" he asked, confused. She regained her posture at once. "Nothing," she said coldly. "Continue the talks tomorrow. The court is dismissed." The guards obeyed. The humans were guided away to guest quarters. Aaron bowed again before leaving, unaware of what had just passed across her heart. As the great doors closed, Sarathis stood alone in the echoing hall, her fingers trembling. The memories flooded back, the smoke, the heat, the sound of his breathing through a broken helmet as he carried her across the ash. She had never thanked him. And now, after 16 years, fate had brought him back before her, not as a savior, but as a supposed enemy seeking peace. That night, Sarathis stood on the balcony of her chambers, watching the city lights below. The towers floated like lanterns over dark water. She remembered his face under starlight, a human who had saved her without knowing who she was. She wondered what had driven him to risk his life that day, and why even now, seeing him again stirred something warm and painful inside her heart. Her personal attendant, Lyra, entered quietly. "Your Majesty, you seem troubled." Sarathis did not look away from the stars. "Tell me, Lyra, do you believe in fate?" Lyra tilted her head. "Fate, my queen?" "Yes. The idea that paths cross for a reason. That time itself bends to bring two beings together when the universe wills it." Smiled softly. "I think sometimes it happens, Majesty. But it can be cruel as well as kind." Sarathis nodded slowly. "Yes, cruel and kind." She turned back toward the stars. "Prepare the archives. I want the data from the crash on Doria. All of it. Tonight, my queen." "Now?" Lyra bowed and hurried away. Moments later, the holographic screen appeared before Sarathis. The files were old, nearly erased by time. But there it was, a signal log showing the Terran beacon code. AH047, the same signature as Aaron Holt. Her chest tightened. She whispered, "So it was you all along." A tear formed at the corner of her eye, quickly hidden. Elorian queens did not cry. But that night, the strongest heart in the Empire trembled like a child's dot in the guest quarters. Aaron looked out at the alien skyline. The stars here seemed closer, larger, almost alive. He had traveled to dozens of worlds, seen strange creatures and endless wars. But something about this planet felt different, colder, softer. He thought of the Queen's eyes. There was something in them he couldn't explain. Familiar, maybe even comforting, though he couldn't recall where he'd seen them before. He rubbed the small metal tag around his neck. It was dented and burned from an old mission Doria, the crash site. He remembered the injured alien he had rescued. Her eyes had glowed violet in the dark, like two distant suns. He had thought of them sometimes, wondering if she had survived. He didn't know that she now ruled an empire. The next morning, the city awoke under red dawn. The Queen stood by her window, still thinking. She knew tomorrow's council meeting would decide whether peace or war returned. But all she could think about was the man she owed her life to. The man who didn't even know what he had done, for the first time in many years. Sarathis felt something she had thought long dead: hope. The next morning came with pale light filtering through the Citadel's towers. The city of EpicSciFiTales floated quietly above the clouds, but inside the palace, tension moved like a hidden storm. Queen Sarathis stood in front of the tall window of her private hall, staring out into the horizon. She had barely slept. The faces of her council haunted her thoughts, their doubt, their anger, their fear of change. She knew that by standing beside a human, she had risked everything. But she also knew that peace had a cost, and she was willing to pay it. Lyra, her loyal attendant, entered softly. "Majesty, the Terran envoy waits in the council chamber. They say Captain Holt is ready for the signing." Sarathis nodded slowly. "In the council? They have gathered, but many look uneasy." The queen turned. "Then we must show them that courage is stronger than fear." She adjusted her robe, the one woven with silver threads that shimmered like the night sky. Her crown gleamed faintly, but beneath her calm face, her heart beat fast. This day would change everything. In the great chamber, the Terran representatives stood on one side of the crystal table, the Elorian Council on the other. At the center sat the queen, with Captain Aaron Holt beside her. He noticed how quiet the room was. Too quiet. The air felt heavy. Even the hum of the energy lights seemed slower. Aaron leaned slightly toward her. "Your Majesty," he whispered, "are you sure this is safe?" She smiled faintly. "Nothing worth saving is ever safe." Then she spoke aloud. "By the power of this council and the will of both worlds, we gather to end the war that has taken too much from us all." Her words echoed through the chamber. Some Elorians lowered their heads. Others stayed stiff, their expressions hard. She continued, "Peace is not surrender. It is strength. It takes more courage to forgive than to destroy. This human beside me once showed that courage. When I was nothing but a wounded stranger, he saved me. That act has guided my heart ever since." The silence that followed was deep. Then, slowly, Aaron stepped forward. "I didn't save you because you were Elorian or human," he said softly. "I saved you because you needed help. That's something neither of our species should forget." For a brief moment, the room felt lighter. A few council members nodded quietly. The queen smiled with relief. Maybe this was working. But then, the lights flickered. A low vibration moved through the floor. The floating crystals above began to hum in an uneven rhythm. Lyra ran into the hall, her face pale. "Majesty, something's wrong in the East Wing. Power surges everywhere." Before anyone could react, a burst of blue light shook the walls. The entire citadel trembled. Guards shouted, and the council members leaped from their seats. "Everyone, stay back." Aaron moved towards Sarathis, shielding her instinctively. The great doors burst open, and smoke rolled into the chamber. Through it stepped Vareth, her advisor, surrounded by soldiers wearing black armor instead of the royal silver. "Vareth," Sarathis said, her voice calm but sharp, "what is this madness?" He bowed mockingly. "Madness? Majesty? No, salvation. You would hand our empire to the humans, but I will not allow it. The throne belongs to strength, not weakness." "Put down your weapons," she commanded. He shook his head. "You have been blinded by this Terran. I warned you he would poison your mind. Now it ends." Aaron stepped forward. "You don't want to do this. You'll start another war," Vareth sneered. "There was never peace to begin with." He raised his hand, and his soldiers moved forward. Sarathis spread her arms protectively. "Stop. This is not the way." But before she could finish, another tremor ripped through the floor. The power crystals exploded in bright flashes, sending energy waves across the hall. The guards fell back, shielding their eyes. "Your Majesty, this way." Aaron grabbed her arm, guiding her toward the side corridor as fragments of light rained down. They ran through the smoke-filled passage. the sounds of chaos echoing behind them. Alarms wailed across the citadel. "Where are we going?" Aaron asked between breaths. "The emergency hangar," Sarathis replied. "It leads to the lower city. We can regroup there." Her voice stayed calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She had never imagined her own advisor would turn against her. They reached a long tunnel lined with silver lights. The walls flickered with failing power. A distant hum filled the air, the sound of engines preparing for flight. "Someone's trying to take the royal transports," Aaron said. Sarathis touched a control panel. "They won't get far." The doors sealed behind them with a heavy clang. For a moment, they stopped to breathe. Aaron looked at her. "You knew this might happen, didn't you?" She met his eyes. "Yes, but I hoped I was wrong." He gave a tired smile. "You still came to the table anyway. That takes more guts than most generals I've met." She smiled faintly. "And you still protect me, just as you did before." Their eyes held for a moment longer than either expected. The chaos around them seemed to fade, replaced by quiet understanding. Then the walls shook again. "They're cutting through," Aaron said quickly. Sarathis pressed her hand against the control pad. "Follow me." They stepped into a smaller chamber filled with sleek crafts that floated above magnetic pads. She climbed into one and motioned for him to join. "We're leaving." Aaron climbed into the pilot's seat beside her. "You trust me to fly alien tech?" She gave a small smile. "You saved my life twice now. I think I can trust you with a ship." The engines roared to life, and the craft lifted through an opening roof. The sky above was red with sunset and smoke as they rose over the city. Aaron looked down at the glowing towers below. Now flickering from the rebellion's chaos, Sarathis spoke quietly. "Vareth believes strength means domination. He never understood that true strength is mercy. He will destroy everything to keep his pride." Aaron glanced at her. "Then let's make sure he doesn't." They guided the ship toward the outer rings, where the royal fleet waited in orbit. Sarathis sent an encoded signal through the ship's console. "I'm calling the loyal guard. They will secure the palace." Within minutes, several Elorian fighters appeared. Escorting their craft like glowing birds, a voice came through the comms. "My queen, we received your signal. The rebels are being contained. Vareth is fleeing to the outer docks." Sarathis looked at Aaron. "We can stop him there." The ship descended near the docks, a vast metal platform stretching over the city's edge. Varys' shuttle was already powering up. The wind howled through the open bay. Aaron and Sarathis stepped out together. "Vareth," she called. Her voice carried through the air like thunder. "It ends now." He turned, his eyes full of fury. "You've already ended us, my queen. You betrayed your own blood for a human." Sarathis' voice broke slightly. "No, I saved our future." For a moment, everything was still: the wind, the hum of the engines, even time itself. Then, from the shadows, loyal guards arrived, surrounding Vareth's men. He looked around and knew he had lost. "You'll regret this, Mercy," he spat, before the guards restrained him. Sarathis turned away, her expression heavy. She felt no triumph, only sadness. "Take him to the council chamber. He will face justice, not vengeance." Aaron stepped beside her. "You did the right thing," she nodded slowly. "Right choices are often lonely." They stood side by side, watching the sunrise breaking through the smoke. The city began to quiet. The rebellion had failed. Later, in the Grand Hall, Sarathis addressed both the council and the Terran delegation once again. Her voice was calm, but carried a strength that silenced everyone. "Today," she said, "we stood at the edge of ruin, but a single act of trust saved us again. Let this be the proof that peace is not weakness. It is wisdom. Let the name of Aaron Holt be remembered as the man who showed two worlds how to forgive." Aaron bowed his head slightly. "And let it be known," he replied softly, "that Queen Sarathis showed humanity what true honor means." The chamber filled with quiet applause, the sound gentle but real. For the first time in many years, the air in the citadel felt light. That night, the queen stood once more on her balcony, the city lights below glowing like stars. She heard footsteps and turned to see Aaron walking toward her. "The Council finally agreed," he said with a smile. "The treaty is signed. No more war," she smiled back. "The stars have waited a long time to hear that." They stood together, watching the endless sky. Sarathis spoke softly. "You saved me twice, Captain Holt. Once on a lonely moon, and once in the heart of my own palace. I will not forget either." He shook his head. "Maybe it wasn't saving. Maybe it was just keeping a promise neither of us knew we made." Her eyes softened. "Then let it be a promise kept forever." A gentle wind moved through the balcony, lifting her silver hair like strands of light. For a brief moment, Aaron thought she looked less like a ruler and more like a being made of starlight itself. They said no more after that. Words felt small next to what they both understood, the bond of two lives that had crossed once in chance and again in destiny. Weeks later, news spread across both galaxies. The Treaty of Allura ended the century of conflict. Human ships landed on alien soil not as invaders but as guests. Elorian engineers visited Earth to rebuild old cities destroyed by war. The people of both worlds learned new languages, shared music, and studied each other's skies. But among all those stories, one tale was whispered the most: the legend of the human who saved an alien queen, and the queen who saved humanity in return. The next day began with golden light spreading over the floating city. From her balcony, Queen Sarathis watched the twin suns rise behind the silver towers of Allura Prime. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, but her thoughts were far from peaceful. All night she had searched the old files, reading every report about the crash on the moon. Doria, the more she read, the more the pieces connected. The unknown human rescuer from 16 cycles ago had the same ship code, same name, same face. The man who now stood before her in peace talks was indeed the one who had saved her life long ago. But how could she tell him? Would he even remember her? Back then she had been covered in ash and blood, her voice weak, her crest dim. To him, she might have been just another alien stranger in need of help. Her heart wanted to thank him. Her mind warned her not to. She turned as her advisor, Varith, entered the chamber. He bowed low. "Your Majesty, the Council waits in the lower hall. They wish to discuss the human proposal." "Let them wait," she replied softly. Varith blinked. "Wait, Majesty. With respect, the Terrans grow impatient. They ask for an answer before they leave orbit." "I will speak to Captain Holt personally," she said. "Not to his council." Varith hesitated. "Alone, my queen?" "Yes, alone." He bowed again, though uneasily. "As you command." The royal guards escorted Captain Aaron Holt through long, glowing corridors. The air shimmered faintly with energy currents. Aaron walked in silence, his thoughts unsettled. The Queen's sudden question yesterday about the moon Doria had stirred something deep inside him. That place had been a long-buried memory, one of the few times he had truly felt he had done something right. The guards stopped before a large doorway made of crystal and light. It opened slowly, revealing a quiet chamber filled with floating gardens and soft mist. The Queen stood by a wide window, her robe trailing across the marble floor. "You may leave us," she said to the guards. They bowed and disappeared behind the closing doors. Aaron stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, I'm honored you asked for this meeting." Sarathis turned, her violet eyes glowing softly in the morning light. "Captain Holt," she said gently, "do you believe that one act of kindness can change the course of two worlds?" He looked at her, puzzled. "I'd like to believe that, yes." "Why do you ask?" She walked slowly toward him, her expression unreadable. 16 cycles ago, a human rescued a wounded Elorian officer from a burning ship. That officer was me. Aaron's eyes widened slightly. "You were on Doria." "Yes," she whispered. "You carried me from the wreckage. You saved my life when even my own soldiers could not reach me." For a moment, silence filled the room. Aaron's gaze softened as the memories returned, carrying a wounded alien through fire, her faint voice asking for water. The way her glowing eyes had stayed open until rescue arrived. "I remember," he said quietly. You were barely breathing. I didn't even know your name. I'm glad you survived. Sarathis smiled faintly, her composure melting for a heartbeat. You saved me without asking who I was or what side I fought for. That memory has stayed with me through every battle since. I never thought I would see you again. Aaron looked down, almost shy. I didn't think I'd be standing in front of a queen. She laughed softly, a sound like wind over glass. Nor did I expect my rescuer to come offering peace instead of a sword. The silence between them felt gentle, not heavy. Outside, the sky shimmered with ships crossing the clouds. Finally, Sarathis said, I want to trust you, Captain Holt, but peace is not something easily given here. Many of my advisors would rather continue the old ways. They see humanity as invaders. I understand, Aaron said, but we don't have to be enemies. The Terran fleet doesn't want to rule anyone. We just want to survive without fighting over every planet. The Queen looked at him closely. You speak with honesty, but your people fear what they don't understand. So do mine. That's why we need to start somewhere, he replied. Maybe this meeting could be that start. Sarathis walked to the table at the center of the room. She placed a small crystal sphere on its surface. A projection appeared, showing an image of the moon, Doria Gray, burned, silent. This world changed both our lives, she said. Perhaps it can now change the fate of our races. Aaron nodded slowly. If you're willing to take that chance, so am I. That afternoon, the Queen called a private meeting in her hidden garden, far from the council chambers. It was a place only a few knew existed, a sanctuary filled with golden flowers that floated above pools of blue water. She walked there with Aaron at her side. Do you know why I built this garden? She asked as they walked. He shook his head. It reminds me of what was lost, she said. When the war began, this place was empty desert. I planted these flowers myself after the first peace attempt failed. I told myself that if life could grow here again, perhaps peace could too. Aaron looked around, impressed. It's beautiful. Almost feels like Earth. Her eyes turned toward him. Tell me about your world, he smiled faintly. It's messy, loud, full of rain and noise. But sometimes you find quiet places, green forests, oceans that go on forever. People there dream of the stars. They think aliens are just stories. If they saw this garden, they'd never want to fight again. She listened carefully. The more he spoke, the more human emotion fascinated her. His words carried warmth she rarely heard in her court. Most of her people spoke in logic and law, but Aaron spoke in feelings, and it made her chest ache in a way she could not explain. When they reached the center of the garden, she said quietly, You risked your life once for a stranger. Would you risk it again for peace? He looked at her directly. If peace meant saving lives, yes. Her lips curved in a faint smile. Then perhaps there is hope. As night fell, the Queen returned to the main citadel to face the council. The great chamber filled with rows of glowing seats, each occupied by a member of the High Assembly. When she entered, all rose in respect. Vareth stood at the center, holding a data tablet. Your Majesty, he began, the council has reviewed the Terran proposal. Most find it risky. The humans demand equal rights to trade routes and shared colonies. It is unacceptable. Sarathis's gaze turned cold. They do not demand. They request. And it is not unacceptable, it is fair. Murmurs spread across the room. One elder spoke, Majesty, these humans cannot be trusted. Their machines pollute the air. Their ships consume resources. They will drain Alora dry. Enough. Her voice rose, echoing like thunder through the chamber. The elders fell silent. She took a breath, calming herself. I have seen the worst of humanity, but I have also seen their courage and compassion. One of them saved me when none of you could. I will not forget that. Gasps filled the hall. Vareth's eyes widened. Majesty, you reveal too much. Truth is not a weapon, she interrupted. It is a bridge. And if you wish to follow me, you will learn to walk across it. No one spoke after that. The Queen turned and left the chamber, her robe sweeping behind her like a storm. Later that evening, She found Aaron waiting by the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Rough day?" he asked lightly. She smiled, tired but calm. "The Council resists change. They fear losing power. But I made them listen." He nodded. "Change always starts that way. Someone has to take the first step." For a moment, they stood side by side, watching the galaxy turn outside the glass. The silence between them was peaceful, full of shared understanding. Finally, Sarathis spoke again, softly. "You humans have a saying, don't you? That every act of kindness echoes across time." "Yes," Aaron said. "I've always believed that." She looked at him. "Then perhaps that echo brought you here." He met her gaze and smiled faintly. "Maybe it did." Hours later, long after Aaron returned to his quarters, Sarathis sat alone in her private chamber. She looked at the glowing files still open on her desk, the record of his rescue on Doria. Her fingers traced the digital image of a younger version of herself being carried by a man in a broken suit. "Why did you come back, Aaron Holt?" she whispered to herself. Was it fate or something more? Through the glass walls, she saw the stars shimmer like living eyes. She felt something inside her shift, a quiet warmth she had buried for years. She didn't yet call it hope, or trust, or love, but she knew it was something powerful, something she could no longer ignore in the corridors below. However, not everyone shared her feelings. Vareth walked in shadow, his mind full of anger. "The Queen is blinded by the human," he muttered to another advisor. "If she continues, she will destroy everything the Empire stands for." The other advisor looked uncertain. "What do you suggest?" Vareth's expression hardened. "If peace means weakness, then we must stop it before it spreads." Back in her chamber, Sarathis turned off the lights and stood by the window one last time. She thought of the humans sleeping somewhere in her citadel. Unaware of the danger rising around them both, in her heart, she made a quiet promise. "He once saved me without knowing who I was. This time, I will protect him, even if he never learns why."